Welcome. I'm Nolan Dalla. We're back for another edition of Happy Hour here in Las Vegas. What a perfect name for the perfect guest. We're ready to introduce Al Mancini. He's a food writer for the Las Vegas Review Journal. He's got quite an extensive resume, a Las Vegas based author, journalist, TV host, specializing in food and dining. And if you live in Las Vegas, there's no man's recommendation higher, I think, than Al Mancini, who writes about the bar and restaurant and food scene and chefs and all that stuff. And a lot of times I disagree with him, but almost all the time I come around to his side because he just really tells it like it is. Before he was a food critic here in Las Vegas, he worked for ABC News Radio, worked in New York City. He's been featured in U.S. News and World Report, the Washington Times, Men's Health, of course, the Review Journal, hundreds of times, and I could go on. But without further ado, welcome Al Mancini.
Wow, that was a great intro, man. Thanks a lot. I don't think my mother could have given me a better intro than that. Thank you. I feel lucky to be here.
Thank you so much. We're going to have a lot of fun the next hour. I've got a lot of questions, and if you're watching us live on Facebook, feel free to type a question in and we'll get to it. This is going to be kind of a two-way street on the conversation. I'm going to learn so much from Al here. So let's get started. Al, how do you become a food critic? I mean, that sounds like the greatest job in the world, to write about food and bars and restaurants. How do you get that job?
I don't know. You've had a pretty interesting career yourself, and I'd love to know how you get some of your jobs. I think the first time I met you, you were tournament director for the World Series of Poker or something, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But we won't talk about that because I think I got in trouble that year. But that being said, how do you get into being a food critic? That's weird. I don't even know how I got to be a writer or how I got to be a journalist. I kind of always did things that I enjoyed doing and loved doing. The short version, I was in New York City, worked in the music industry, found myself without work. I was tending bar at CBGB, a famous punk rock bar. Went to law school at night, law school by the day, bartending at night. I thought I was really going to be somebody respectable, do something respectable with my life. And then rock and roll called back to me. ABC News was looking for a rock journalist. I took that gig. We were sending people out to Las Vegas pretty frequently. I wanted to come out here and live out here. I convinced my bosses that we needed a full-time Las Vegas correspondent out here. So I moved out here to cover entertainment, and I started just writing locally because, it was like 5% of my income was for local writing, but I wanted to be part of the local community at the time. My first job was reviewing strip clubs for Las Vegas Weekly, while still at ABC News, of course. So that's how I got into being a critic, I suppose. I was a reviewer. My wife and I did that together.
I'm sorry, time out. Time out, Al, time out. I got to stop you because everybody who just listened to me is going to ask the same question. A strip club reviewer? So you went around to strip clubs and wrote reviews? Really?
Yeah, this was 2001, 2002. I just moved to Las Vegas. There were, we were in the heyday of strip clubs back then. All the dancers were making a ton of money. Expense accounts were huge. It was before the recession, before the last recession. My wife and I spent a lot of time in strip clubs. And when I approached an editor from the Weekly, we talked about how I'd like to write locally. She came out, she met my wife and I, we became very good friends. And she was like, we've been talking about how we need somebody to write about the sex industry out here, mostly strip clubs. Would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, why not? I'm already going to strip clubs all the time. But that's really when I first started doing reviews. And people would always say, and interestingly enough, I was fortunate enough to be profiled in the New York Times at one point, along with some of my co-authors. And the opening paragraph is me talking about how reviewing food and reviewing strip clubs are very similar experiences. So that was my intro to the New York Times. That's probably why they've never come back.
Wait a minute. How do you write a bad review about a strip club? And what would you say? But there was a lot of. Yeah, I had real criteria that I went in looking for, and it was the same in all of them. At the time, women weren't frequently seen hanging out in strip clubs, so I wanted to see how my wife was treated. I wanted to see whether they watered down their drinks. I wanted to see how hard the hustle was.
You know, if I wasn't buying dances, you know, how friendly were they to me? And I wanted really to see the variety in the dancers. You know, I wasn't always the Barbie doll type. We all have different tastes. And 2002, 2003, you know, I mean, there was just a lot of silicone and a lot of bleach blonde hair. Not tattoos were really taboo in strip clubs in those days. You never would have seen ass cheek implants in those days, but you saw lots of big boobs. And, you know, I liked a little variety. You know, I think at the time my preference was probably for the skinny, junky looking chicks and, you know, whatever. But we talk about whether you could find women of color in there, whether you could find, you know, ethnic variety. I mean, you know, I really did try to approach it the way a journalist would approach anything. And that was my first experience reviewing things. And, you know, I do think there is a lesson to be learned from that, which is, you know, when you go into a strip club, especially as somebody who wasn't into the Barbie dolls necessarily, you go into the strip clubs and you knew, sorry, I've got messages popping up. I thought I did the do not disturb. My apologies. You know, I knew my tastes were not everybody's tastes, right? And I knew that, you know, the kind of ladies that I was looking for weren't necessarily what everybody else was looking for. And that's a really important lesson to take forward to you when you start reviewing restaurants, is to understand the difference between what you're looking for and then the different, you know, and then just describing what the variety is, what's out there, and let people decide for themselves whether it's good or whether it's bad. Because the exact same way that you're not going to get a lap dance from the same lady that I want a lap dance from, you may not like the same preparation of spaghetti and meatballs that I like, you know, and I like a lot of garlic, you may not, right? So, you know, I did take that lesson with me into the food world, which is, you know, stay away from good or bad and get into describing the experience. And then let people decide for themselves what's good or bad. Now, certainly, you know, if your food comes to your table an hour late and you're sitting there, and we'll get into bad meals later, but you know, then of course nobody likes that, right? I understand that. But you know, the little things that you pick apart, you know, we go into this with our own biases and our own prejudices, and if you want to be a good writer, it's fun to trash things that you don't like, and it's very tempting to go and badmouth things that you don't like, but you're not really serving your audience unless you're there to be a comedian, unless you're there to get the laughs, you know? And I always try to approach it more as a journalist. So, you know, I do think that there's something that crosses over there. Plus, you know, we all like food and we all like sex. I mean, for the most part. So there's a good crossover there too. You know, and you know, luckily we all eat every day. I don't know if all of us are lucky enough to have sex every day, but we usually think about it at least once a day. So, you know, it made sense.
On that note, Al, I have to ask you, you know, this is a big city we live in, and it's an international food destination. We're going to talk about that a little later, but it's also a small town in a way. The food industry, people tend to know each other. And but the lack of, I don't want to risk offending you here, but when you walk around, you kind of stand out. I know that may shock you.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't have the right angle for, yeah, but this is what it looks like. When you see me head on, I look more like Bert from Ernie and Bert, just as one little top coming up. But yeah, I'm hard to miss.
Let me ask you that what I'm going at here. I wasn't trying to pick on that. More or less, I was looking for the sense of, if you're reviewing something or writing about it, you would want to stay on deep background or be anonymous. The problem is, I would think everyone is going to be on their best behavior when they see Al Mancini's in the house. True or false?
Oh, no, that's very true. Or their worst behavior, depending on what I've written about them in the past. You know, it does sometimes, you're a little nervous going in. But now, again, keeping in mind that, you know, I approached writing about food when I eventually got offered my first job as a restaurant critic. You know, as a critic, as opposed to a food writer, they're very different roles. And I'm much more comfortable being a food writer, writing about news, writing about trends, writing about things like that. And for that, it's good to have connections. It's good to have people that recognize you, that want to tell you things. As a critic, no, it's not optimal. But, you know, I came here to cover entertainment. I came here to cover to cover rock and roll rock stars and you know, Celine Dion and all that kind of stuff. And I used to work red carpets all the time. And when you look distinctive and you're on the red carpet at the Grammys or the Oscars or wherever you may be on a red carpet, you can see these rock stars walk by that you haven't seen in, you know, a year. And if they recognize you, you know, they're going to stop and they're going to come over and they're going to have a talk with you. So for me, being identifiable, being recognizable, having well-known people remember who I am was always key to getting news. You know, it always made it much easier for me to turn around. Now I'm a little worried. I see somebody's come to my door and I think we're going to get my dog going nuts. So forgive me if that happens. But, you know, I came in to be recognizable and to have people know who I was, because that's how I got the news that I was reporting on. It was not helpful to being a critic. It's not helpful to being an anonymous critic. And that's really never what I wanted to do. But, you know, even when people know who you are and when you're getting food, you know, that's brought to you that you know you might be getting a larger portion than somebody else, you know, they spend a lot of good time, you know, a lot of time making sure yours looks the best. Yes, that's not the experience everybody else gets, but it's pretty obvious if you look at the tables next to you what kind of experience other people are getting. And the other thing is, if they're having a shit day in the kitchen, they're not going to be able to fix that because I walk in.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it doesn't matter. If you're not on your game, you're not on your game. You can't get good just because you know a critic's in the house. You can pay attention to the details, but you can't make yourself good if you weren't good. So, you know, I don't think they changed the recipes for me. Maybe I got a slightly larger portion, but again, you turn around, you look at the tables next to you, you see how well those people are getting treated. You see whether the chef goes to their table after he stops at yours. I mean, that's a really easy thing to pay attention to. You know, when the celebrity chef comes out to say hi to me, how many other tables did he stop at on the way? And how many tables does he stop at on the way back to the kitchen? That's the real experience, you know, and you don't have to be a genius, because I know, because I'm not a genius. You don't have to be a genius to be able to observe those things. In the meantime, if people know who you are, if they recognize you and they have some news, if they know that something's going to be closing, if they know that, you know, that some chef is leaving here and going there, being recognizable helps, because they come to you. I mean, I'm sure people are constantly sending you tips all day long. And I'm sure when you see people out, that, you know, they come up to you and they tell you a little bit of gossip because they know who you are. So as far as reporting news, yeah, it's helpful to have people know who you are. It's nice to have Bobby Flay remember you, you know? It means Bobby Flay's going to talk to me maybe on days that he doesn't talk to other people. And if I'm trying to be a journalist first, that is good stuff, you know?
Yeah. Well, you have reviewed restaurants in the past, and of course, there's a lot of just legendary restaurant reviewers, mostly in, you know, large markets, New York and LA and so forth. I wonder though about that restaurant reviewers are traditionally associated with magazines and especially newspapers. And with the demise of the newsroom, I don't need to get into that because you work for a newspaper, but where restaurants are, to a large degree, they fuel the advertising for a newspaper. And so I'm curious about that in the past, not so much today because you don't do that too much anymore, but in the past, tell us about the restaurant critic who goes out and tries to give, let's say, an honest review. Talk about the pressures of the newsroom, that you don't want to piss off potential advertiser. And what are the rules for food and restaurant critics? There's this illusion, I think, myth that they're all comped wherever they go. That's certainly, I don't think, the case, because that would you know, it influenced the review. Talk about the culture of that and the integrity, if you will, of restaurant reviewing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different cans of a lot of different worms you opened there. But, you know, look, first and foremost, you know, I made it clear right off the bat that I was never going to change one of my reviews because advertising was complaining about it, or, you know, things like that. You know, and I was working for ABC News when I started writing restaurant reviews for Las Vegas City Life. So, you know, I told my editors point blank that, you know, if I'm not risking my integrity as a journalist for a job that's paying, you know, 5% of my annual salary over here. And they were always super supportive of me at City Life. I mean, I can remember a time that the first time somebody tried to say, you know how much we advertise with your paper? And I was like, you know, do you know how little I care about that? You know? And that being said, I've written for a lot of places. I have had people tell me that I've had people tell me things that maybe they hope will influence me. Maybe I won't write it, but, you know, I can think of one local paper in particular. It's not the one that I'm working at now. It's not one that I've mentioned out loud so far, where they wouldn't send me to review certain restaurants because they knew I was going to be really honest and it was a big advertiser. And they decided that for their coverage of that particular restaurant or that restaurant group or that casino, whatever it would be, that maybe they would send the fashion designer over there to talk about their uniforms, or maybe and that's how they would cover that, right? Or they would send, you know, somebody that talks about interior design to talk about their decor. And I have been waved off of reviews and told, don't review this place, we're just not interested. And it's been very rare. I mean, you know, we're talking about 20 years almost in Vegas, and I can count on one hand the number of times it's happened, and I'm fine with that. Like, if you don't want, if you're not asking me to write something that's not true, you know, you own the paper, cover it how you wish, but I'll never put my name on something that I don't believe 100%, you know, and that I won't stand by. I may change my mind, or I may regret it. Maybe I was drunk when I wrote it. I don't know. But, you know, like, I'll take things back, but I'll never put my name on something that, you know, that I don't like. So I never had to really worry about that aspect of it. You know, people treated me pretty well with that. You know, the comp thing, that's, everybody thinks, you know, oh, it's all comp food, blah, blah, blah. And I know a lot of the hobbyists out there, some really obnoxious people like to say that all the critics go around getting comp meals. I mean, I'll tell you this. When I was with Las Vegas City Life, I was writing reviews once a week. And at that point, I told people, if you give me something for free, I won't write about it. So, like, the chef would see that I was there. I had bought my meal. At that point, I was buying 2 meals for each place on their dime. And, you know, if the chef sent me out something, I'd say, look, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for the gesture. But just so you know, whatever dishes you send for free are not going to be in the article. And my answer for that is always, like, if somebody gives you a gift, you don't really critique it. You know, I mean, if your favorite aunt sends you an ugly sweater, you don't go on the internet and say, this is an ugly sweater. You wear the damn thing, you know, and you say, thank you very much for the ugly sweater. So if a chef sends me out something, I'm not going to critique it. You know, that's a gift. Thanks a lot. That was awesome. But just so you know, don't send me too much stuff because it's not getting written about. You know, years later, I went on and I worked at a different publication where their thing was that they were going to pay for me to have 1 full meal there, and I would pay for that out of pocket. If I got invited to a media dinner in addition to that, or if the chef had me in, or if the chef wanted me to go another time, they didn't have a problem with me writing about the things that I got for free. I still didn't really like it very much, but you know, they were okay with that because we had already paid for the 1 meal that was our policy to pay for. And, you know, I know at the RJ, I've never written a review at the RJ, but I know that they would never, that Heidi, who did write reviews there, you know, I know she didn't take comps, and she had a very, very strict no comp policy. You know, the thing is, since a lot of times what I'm writing are not reviews, a lot of times what I'll write is 5 great places to get caviar, you know, 7 great places to get pizza, etc. The resorts and the people with the big budget, they do want me in there, and they want me to try things that I wouldn't go in and pay for on my own. And that does make sense because that's just planting the seeds for an article that might come 6 months later. You know, that's the same to me as when I reviewed music, or not reviewed, I never wrote reviews, excuse me. When I covered music and I talked to bands all the time, I got free CDs, I got free concert tickets because these people want you to know what you're talking about when you're coming up with it. So yeah, I do go to media dinners. I do graciously accept, you know, free food if somebody sends it to me. I'll tell you, I never order anything unless I have the money in my pocket to pay for it, and I fully expect to pay for it. When I'm lucky enough to be comped, I try to tip reasonably well. And I say thank you very much, whether I liked it or not. And then I put it in the back of my head, and maybe there's something that I will be able to use that for in the future. I don't know if, you know, some people might say that's a rationalization or that there's something, you know, strange about that. But, you know, it is a weird, you know, it is a weird thing to do. But I you know, I don't have a problem with accepting, you know, with going to a press dinner with, you know, 20 other journalists and taking their food, you know, like, how are you going to know what's happening in this town if you don't go to those things?
Yeah, I almost have to put a disclaimer on every question that we live in the age, at least right now, of COVID, and that influences, you know, a lot of things right now. And we're going to talk about that in a bit, but let's put that on the table and talk about just the usual lifestyle of Al Mancini. Is what you do glamorous, would you say?
No more glamorous than just writing about Las Vegas in general is, you know. I think that It's nice. It's nice to go into Robuchon and have, in the day when Mr. Robuchon was still alive, and have him come over to the table and say hi. But, I've always covered entertainment. I've always covered people who were famous. In my entire life, I've been around, I was hanging out backstage with Metallica before I was old enough to drink. And, because my college radio station was supporting Metallica. So, once you get used to being around famous people, celebrity chefs are fun, but they're not even at the top of the list of cool people I've been around in my life. And, you just realize it's a job. At the end of the day, there's a reason they pay you to do it, because, there are days you don't want to do it, but I've always been really lucky or smart, I don't know which, in that I try to write about things that I like, that I care about, that I enjoy doing. So it's never a burden to be there writing about it. But, it's not like, trust me, man, we're not hanging out in their house and drinking Dom together. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm going out, I'm having a meal. We all eat at these restaurants. So I feel lucky, extraordinarily lucky for what I have. But, I'm not a star. I'm not a celebrity. I get to be close and around and in the same room as celebrities, but I've had that for 25, 30 years of my life, and that's just part of what it's like to be around famous people. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. Good answer. And I've done, I would call this, I do the mini Al Mancini thing. And that means is I go around, as you've seen, and write and written about a lot of local restaurants. Hey, Marietta, my wife and I will go to this place for lunch. We had this great little meal at this tiny little Thai place that we want to tell you about. And I'll write I call it a mini review on social media. Actually, a lot of the people probably watching out there have shared, hey, go to this place. Probably you've never heard about it, this and that. So I think that it's called word of mouth. And the great thing about social media, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, is that it allows us to share, those neighborhood experiences. And I've learned so many things, not just from you, but from friends who have shared these kinds of things. Now, what I have had experiences, though, where I have met people and had meals, sometimes when I even know the owners of the restaurant, always a small business, that, hey, Nolan, would you mind writing something about my place? And then the meal is not very good, or there's a real problem. And of course, just like you say, you don't want to put your name on something, your reputation, and recommend something. I've even won a few gifts, like gift certificates to restaurants. We went and tried them and the food was just not good. And then, like, what do you do? I'm sure comes up like what I just told you. It must come up like times 10 with you. And I know you're, again, not going to put your name on something you don't believe, but how do you, again, you're going to have a lot of people asking you for favors and that really, really, in some cases really need some help from you. How do you balance all that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, because my philosophy when I wrote reviews was always all about describing the experience and not giving it a, 1 to 10 or a thumbs up or thumbs down or an A, B, C, D, F grade, you can avoid that. You can talk about your experiences without being judgmental, saying what it is you liked about it, what it is you didn't like about it. I mean, in the end, I anger far more chefs than I please, and I anger chefs even in good reviews, because it's not what I call a refrigerator, paper, right? Everybody wants you to write. Everybody thinks you should be writing the way their publicist writes, and everybody wants the thing that they can put up on the refrigerator to show their mom or their girlfriend, right? And or their husband or whomever, And I don't I don't write that way. Even if I love a place, I'm going to say a few negative things about it, because no place is perfect. So everybody's mad at me. I mean, let's face it. And it's amazing to me the number of times that I've written reviews that I thought were brilliant and wonderful, and I expected to go in and, I thought at least they were going to say thank you, and instead they start telling me what I got wrong or what I didn't do right. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're always going to make them a little unhappy, and you just have to be able to deal with that. Again, I'd much prefer to write stories that are about trends or about personalities or are about, a new place opening or that are news reported than I do telling people the good and the bad. It's not fun for me anymore. I mean, I don't know why anybody cares that much what Al Mancini likes, but yeah, I guess the short version is they're always pissed. I mean, it doesn't matter what you write. They're always pissed. And I'm sure you get that as well. I mean, you have to have that experience where you write something that you think is awesome and somebody's super mad at you about it.
Oh yeah, you're right. And sometimes I'll write something that's just I don't think is very good, and people come up and hug you. Oh, that's the best thing you did. Me, you just never know the perception of the reader. And you're right. And if you ask 100 people about what they thought, you'll get 110 opinions. So you're right. Well, let's talk about the Las Vegas food culture now a little more, or just general trends, I should say, in food. We live in the age of celebrity culture. And what that means is not just with television shows that you can't turn on a TV show without seeing a famous chef. There's the Food Network and this and that. But let me ask you a pointed question about here in Las Vegas that you have, and I won't use any specific names, but so-and-so's steakhouse. So-and-so will stamp their name on a restaurant, often associated or inside a strip casino. And of course, what they're selling there is not the steakhouse. They're selling that chef's name. Well, this bothers me a great deal because well, for a lot of reasons. And I think you and I discussed this online to some degree. What is your view of celebrity culture, and does someone's name being on the outside of the marquee carry weight with you?
It depends whose name it is on the marquee. I mean, there are a couple of celebrity chefs, whether it be Wolfgang Puck or Michael Mina, who I believe they run incredible organizations. They train great teams. They promote from within. They transfer people from city to city to make sure that there's a lot of knowledge base there. I mean, I know if I see their name on a restaurant that, I mean, I always say I've never had a bad meal in a Michael Mina restaurant, ever. And I've eaten at them in many cities, and, all over the country, if not the world. So sometimes it does carry weight. Other times it doesn't carry any weight at all, and it really shouldn't. But I think this is what you and I got into on Facebook not that long ago. We're all about branding in this day and age. Branding is the most important thing that you could do. I mean, it's the reason that I'm on your no, I'm here because I like talking about you, talking to you. But like we all want to get our names out there. We all want to become more recognizable. So, chefs for years were relegated to the back of the house. Maitre d's and front of the house staff had all of the power. You didn't want to say you knew the chef. You wanted to know the guy at the door with the tuxedo. And, and Le Cirque was the last great bastion of that idea. And then Daniel Boulud, while he was at Le Cirque, decided he was going to become more famous than Sirio Macchione, excuse me. And whether he ever succeeded, I'm not going to say. But, I think it's fair that chefs who do good jobs want to establish a brand and a name for themselves so they're not tied to somebody else. Just as much as writers don't always want to be just associated with the magazine that they're at, they want to be a bigger name that they can up and go elsewhere. So I don't have a problem with that. Now, do I understand why people will stand in line maybe not stand in line, but wait to have their picture taken in front of a sign that says Gordon Ramsay? No. I don't get that, right? Like when I go to the Gordon Ramsay pub or Hell's Kitchen, even more so, and I see people that's their selfie, that's the one that they want to get. I don't get that. You know what I mean? And I like Gordon. I think Gordon's a great guy, and I like some of his restaurants, others I don't like quite as much. But that being said, I think he's a great guy, runs a good team. I don't take pictures of myself with Gordon, right? Because I'm not celebrity obsessed. But we're a celebrity obsessed culture. And for some people, having their picture taken next to the name that says Gordon Ramsay Pub or Gordon, Hell's Kitchen is the same as somebody else who gets their picture taken next to the statue of Caesar at Caesar's Palace. Like, that's what makes Vegas to them. That's what they know about in whatever town that they're from. And I'm all about having tourist attractions. Like, we're Vegas. You're supposed to come here and get your picture taken with something. You know what I mean? So, like, have at it. You know what I mean? Like, why? Why is that a problem? Now, I do think that we have the big problem. Now, I will talk some trash because I know that's what you're hoping to get me to do. I do think it's a problem for young chefs who think that going on a TV show and, doing well on a TV show is more important than learning how to run a kitchen. And as soon as they've been on a TV show, then they suddenly think they're ready to own a restaurant, and they get investors to invest in, and they're not ready. They simply weren't. They shot to fame through being on Top Chef and finishing 8th or something, but they had great tattoos. That's bullshit. Okay. I mean, I get that. And I'm all for slapping them down a little bit, that maybe they got too big for their britches. But you know what, man? They took advantage of an opportunity that was presented to them. I would do the same thing, probably, if I had a chance and I knew that I could go on a show and somebody would throw money at me to start my own newspaper. I just might do it, So it's branding. I mean, that's the short version of it. It's branding. And at the end of the day, you need to brand yourself in 2021. And if you're not branding yourself, and if you're not establishing and developing your brand, you're an idiot for not doing it. But once that's said and done and you've developed the brand, it better be associated with a quality product. And that's not what you can cook in a quick fire challenge, right? I mean, it's what you can deliver day in and day out with a great team who's going to make the dish taste good every time. Who's going to get it to your table on time while it's still warm. It's about using quality ingredients, knowing how to source them so that they're not overpriced, and getting me something that's worth my time and my money. Now, that's what your brand has to be associated with, or it's no different than your brand being a crap brand, So, short version, branding super important, but you better have if you develop your brand really, really well, and you haven't developed your restaurant ability really, really well, then you're going to be found out very, very quickly. And people are going to just stop coming, So I don't have a problem with the celebrity chef. I mean, chefs, why are rock stars famous? Why are actors famous? We live in an age where you can't become a musician unless you have the right look, right? And what does look have to do with music? So does it suck that some people become famous in the kitchen because they're gorgeous? Yeah, I guess so. But then again, it sucks that a lot of bad pop stars got famous because they were gorgeous, So it's all the same, It's the world we live in.
Yeah, one of my favorite critics, Al, is Jonathan Gold in Los Angeles, and I think one of the gifts that he has brought to this discussion is he is a master of uncovering that small little Thai restaurant or Vietnamese restaurant, whatever, in the middle of LA that no tourist would ever drive to. And he's made a whole career out of writing about these little, largely ethnic restaurants. And we've seen the biggest thing in food in the United States that I think's happened, certainly in our generation, is the influence of immigrants. And this is not a political show or this topic, but it has to be a bit here, talking about the United States as an immigrant nation, a melting pot. And I don't think you see that anywhere else more clearly, or taste that anywhere more clearly than just looking at all the different restaurants. It was the Italians, then it was the this, the that. Now it's a lot of Asian cultures, and you've got foods from all over the world. And this just isn't in the big cities. You can go in the middle of Kansas now, and you can find really good Chinese food or what have you. Let's talk about that and how there's just been an absolute sound breaking the sound barrier of any barriers whatsoever on food and so forth in the last, say, 20 years or so. And where are we going with that?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors that play into that. Number one, yes, a lot more people are coming to America and they're bringing their cultures with them. And, we always see the rise, like you said, of Italian-American cuisine, or, even in the Midwest, having Polish cuisine in Cincinnati or something like that, right? I mean, and down to when you're in New York City, okay, I'm going back 20 years to when I lived in New York City, but, the East Village was Ukrainian food, right? And it was just that one little neighborhood. So, yes, we've always had that, and that's ongoing, and I think it'll continue to be ongoing. But I think it's also the fact that Americans travel more than they did. I mean, prior to COVID, we traveled more, and hopefully other countries will let us back in soon, and we can get back to traveling. But also we have television, and we see these things, and the rise of cooking TV, which I don't watch very much of anymore, I'll be dead on honest with you, but the rise of cooking TV did a lot to open people's minds. When you're familiar with and new to you, you know, we're all worried we're going to look stupid, and we don't want to order the thing we can't pronounce, which is always what I tried to do in my writing, which was familiarize people with things and show them that if a schmuck that looks like this can walk into these restaurants and order the amuse, or knows what an amuse-bouche is, then they can all know what it is. But because we've seen all this travel TV, because we've seen all this cooking TV, I don't think people in small towns anywhere in America are nearly as intimidated as they used to be. They know how to pronounce the words. They've heard about that ingredient before. They've seen it. They've seen Anthony Bourdain or somebody eat it before. And so they're more willing to try it. And I think that all of those things coming together, you know, we're a global village at this point, you know, and we mix and we match. And almost to the point where now we've gone full tilt the other way, where we've got a whole bunch of people screaming about cultural appropriation in the kitchen, which is, you know, a whole, like, to me, that's a great thing if you can, you know, if you treat it with respect. But now, you know, now people are mad that we're doing too much of that, you know. So yeah, I think it's a society as a whole. I think we just are exposed to so many more things. We're not afraid of new things. We're willing to try new things, and I love it.
You know, the margins, as you well know, of profitability on a small mom and pop restaurant are very small, and to the point where we're losing a lot of restaurants now, especially with COVID. But the chains seem to be doing a little better. Nonetheless, chain restaurants also I'm seeing some closures here on the west side of town. Talk about chains versus small mom and pop restaurants. You know, when you have a waiter or a bartender or a chef, you know, they work in both of these places, and if you're frequenting either one of them, you're helping, you know, your neighbors. So I never thought in discriminating against even the chain restaurants, because again, the people that work there are people that live among us. But you know, everyone wants to kind of root for the little guy here, meaning the small mom and pop place. Chain restaurants, your view of that here in Las Vegas?
I don't have a lot of use for a chain restaurant unless it's one that I really love for some reason. But, you know, and I'd be hard pressed to come up with some, but I could come up with a few if I tried. But I don't have a lot of time for a chain restaurant in your hometown. I think chain restaurants serve a very important purpose, and that is a consistency that no matter where you go, you are going to be able to find something that you know is going to satisfy you. So when I travel, I do a lot of research on restaurants. I do a lot, you know, and I always have since long before I wrote about it, you know. And I mean, the early days of the internet, one of the first things I used it to do was look up the restaurants in this city I was going to on a vacation or for a wedding or whatever. But not everybody has time to do that. I don't have time to research every meal. If I'm in a foreign country and I'm not with somebody who's local, or if I'm in another city here in Las Vegas and I didn't have the time to do the research, then if I see a chain that I know is solid, okay, I know that that's going to be solid. I know I'm going to get a good quick meal. You know, I know that it's going to be, and whatever. I mean, we could think of something like that. I remember when Bonefish Grill first came to Las Vegas, I thought they were okay. You know what I mean? And I was relatively new to Las Vegas at the time. And yeah, like, okay, cool. If I'm in a foreign city and I see a Bonefish Grill, I don't have time to do research, I might go there, but maybe not. But anyway, maybe. But, you know, there's something to be said for that consistency when you can't do your research. And that, again, it's branding, right? And they've branded themselves as that. But because they're so widespread, because they need to be consistent across the board, they're also going for the largest customer base possible. They want to be as unoffensive to the largest number of people. They want to be unoffensive to the largest number of people. Whereas if you only run one restaurant, then you only have to appeal to enough people to keep that one restaurant filled. You can find a niche for yourself. You could do something that's unique and know that it's not for everybody, but I only have to turn 100 covers a night, right? So as long as I can find 100 covers a night, it's going to make me that many people like what I do, then I'm cool. But damn, you try to roll that out where you've got 8 locations in Las Vegas and 47 across the country, then that thing that was on the verge that only a few people liked, you can't roll that out. So that creativity, that spark, you're not going to find that. The larger a chain gets, the more that it has to engineer that out of the experience in order to grow. Does that make any sense?
It does. Do you ever eat fast food?
I try not to. I mean, nah, you'll never get me into McDonald's. You know what I mean? And like I always say, when I gave up McDonald's, not gave it up, but when I stopped eating McDonald's, I would crave it maybe once every 6 months. Then I would crave it once a year. Then I would crave it once every 2 years. And every time I regretted eating it afterwards, my body would say like, dude, what is this? Why are you doing this? But there are some fast food chains that I like. And I think there are some talented people that, that are developing new fast food concepts.
Yeah, that's true.
There's Valencian Gold, which unfortunately has been closed through the pandemic, and they've been doing a lot of work for the community. But those guys said point blank, they wanted to be the Chipotle of paella, right? And I'm like, well, that's awesome, because where else can you get paella in 5 minutes for $10? Like, so if you're going to bring something new to that, there are a handful of burger places I liked. I still dig Smash Burger if I want to get a fast food hamburger. There are a couple that I think are okay. But I want them to be the places that use slightly better ingredients, and I'm going to go there for specific things. I mean, I'll eat Shake Shack when I'm down at T-Mobile. I'm not too good for any of it. It's just, it's not. I don't eat a lot of red meat anyway, right? I'm not a big burger guy, so if I'm going to have a burger, I'm probably going to want it to be a good burger, and I'm probably going to want it to be a good steak if I'm going to eat a dead cow. So, I don't do a lot of the burger thing. But yeah, man, nobody goes to fast food because they like it. Or if they do, they may not have been exposed to enough other things to know there's better stuff out there. You go to fast food because it's affordable, because you're hungry and you can supersize it for like a nickel extra, and they'll throw 20 times the stuff at you, and you get it fast when you're driving home, and it doesn't matter how good your palate is. We all have those experiences. We've all been broke. We've all been in a hurry. We've all wanted something convenient. So yeah, of course, we all eat fast food. And anybody who says they don't is probably a liar.
Yeah. Well, at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've been out on the town many times, and there's just not much to choose from at 3 in the morning. And, I remember I never eat at McDonald's, but those sausage biscuits that I think it's 3:30 is when they start serving breakfast. For some reason, the McDonald's breakfast is pretty damn good, especially when you've got no other choices. So I'm totally.
I'll eat a sausage McMuffin. That's probably like the last thing that I've had at a McDonald's. It was probably a few years ago, but yeah, I'll eat a sausage McMuffin.
Yeah, right.
Because that's that fine McDonald's sausage.
I'd love to see you going through the drive-through. Hey, there's the food critic for the McDonald's. So, all right, I got to ask you, we're going to talk about Las Vegas, your favorite recommendations for various genres of food. But I have to ask you one thing that just drives me crazy, and let's get to about bartenders now and bars. So your recommendations on bars that you just like to hang out at that have a good vibe. If you want to go hang out, where would you go, Al?
I mean, look, in 2001, I moved to Las Vegas, and my first or second night in town, one of my friends who helped me move here, and, we'd all been from the CBGB crew back in New York. One of my friends said, I heard about this place called the Double Down Saloon. Walked in there my first or second night living in Las Vegas, and my wife turned to me and said, okay, now I know I can live in Las Vegas because it has the Double Down Saloon. So if you want a dive bar, if you want a punk bar, if you want any of that stuff, yeah, Double Down Saloon is the place to go. I mean, if you're a cocktail person, we've got a lot of great places. I love Nick Tolley's place. Nick Tolley Mendoza. I always get his last name wrong. Sorry. I love Herbs and Rye. That's what I'm trying to say. And I also love
Sahara and Valley View, and that's they got a hell of a steak dinner there as well. 2 for 1, by the way. After I think 9 o'clock steaks.
Yeah. Yeah, and also if you really want steak from him, go over to his place over on the other side of town. Go to Cleaver, which is his steakhouse, which is even better for the food. But that was I would credit Herbs and Rye with being the responsible for the second generation of Las Vegas cocktail renaissance, the second renaissance that we had. First one came with Bellagio and Tony Abou-Ganim with the opening of Bellagio. That's when Las Vegas really became an important cocktail town. And then, you know, flash forward maybe 10 years and Herbs and Rye opened up, and that really ushered in a whole new generation of great cocktails in Las Vegas. So, you know, I love those places. I, you know, still enjoy Downtown Cocktail Room. I want to bring my wife up to the bar at the top of Circa for her birthday, because I think that's got a really nice vibe to it. You know, so those are good, but Double Down Saloon. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, buy yourself some puke insurance, drink some ass juice, and have at it.
Good recommendation there. I'm going to ask you here in just a moment all your favorite, you know, foods, restaurants, and that's going to be tough for you, I know, but I'm going to hold you to short answers if I can, just because I have so many different places to ask you about.
You know,
but,
I saw something on your list though about cocktails, something when we were looking at notes, and you know, you brought up this idea of like the $25 cocktail, or you seem to be very very value oriented and like annoyed with high priced cocktails, and I think you and I differ. So I did want to have at least one good fight with you today.
Let's go.
So
go for it. You mean to go first, or you want to go first?
Yeah, go first. So what's your problem with pricey cocktails?
I understand these people that are on expense accounts can afford to blow $25, add the tip, add the tax. Now it's $35 for one cocktail in this little bitty tiny glass. It's the same house vodka, man. It's the same mixer. It's something that down the street at PT's Pub that would cost, you know, the ingredients are 35 cents, and they're shaking it and they're doing the flair thing, which I like. I don't understand flair bartenders. It's one of these things that just drives me crazy. Just give me my drink and with a smile. So, you know, I understand that there's this whole parade and circus atmosphere. You're going to have a few places that serve the $25 cocktail. But here's the problem, man. When I go down to the Strip in Las Vegas, which is not often, and I'm with some people, I don't want to have to, you know, buy a round of drinks and it's $100 fucking dollars. I don't like that, man. I think that's just wrong. Okay. Now
well, it is wrong for the, but why are you there? I mean, why are you on the Strip and what are you doing there? And first of all, you know,
you have to show them the Strip, you know, one time. So you know how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you resorted to though a lot of the bullshit cliches that are just wrong, and you just don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, but it's not the same drink. It's not the same drink. And look, if you are going into, and like I'll use a place that's not even open now because, and probably won't reopen, right? If you're going into Mr. Coco in the Palms to get a rum and Coke, then you're an idiot, okay? Like, yeah, go to PT's. You're a freaking moron. You shouldn't be there. But if you go into Mr. Coco at the Palms when it was open, Francesco Lafranconi, a fantastic mixologist, the cocktails that he mixes are using the best ingredients in town, but even also to your point that you can get the same at PT's. Let's assume you can. You can't because they don't always carry the same stuff, the same ingredients. But let's say you can. Why are you drinking it, man? Are you drinking it for the experience or are you drinking it to catch the buzz? Because when I used to drink a bottle a day, I drank cheap stuff, okay? And, you know, because you got to. If you want to go out and have 5 doubles while you're out, then, yeah, it's Jägermeister, it's Jack Daniel's Black Label. If it was good enough for Lemmy, it's good enough for me. No problem. But when I'm going out for an experience, and then when I'm shooting shots, yes, I want them to be cheap. But when I'm going out for an experience, you may not choose to pay for a great glass. You may not choose to pay for a beautiful sphere of ice that melts perfectly and it's crystal clear. That may not be Nolan Dalla's way to spend his money, and that's fine. You don't have to. But it's not the same drink you're getting at PT's. The glass matters. The ice matters. The mixers matter, that they're fresh squeezed instead of coming out of an orange juice container. All of that stuff affects your experience. And if you're going out for one drink, I would gladly pay $30 for the exact same drink served in a better glass with better ice, with fresh squeezed juice instead of, you know, concentrate, compared to $10 somewhere else. I'll do that for one drink, and I think you're nuts if you wouldn't do it for one drink. Now, if you're going to tie one on, then you better then get your ass over to Double Down Saloon afterwards, have your beautiful drink at Mr. Coco, and then take your ass to the cheap place. And I'm all for that. But there is a difference. The little things do matter. They don't matter to everybody, but they cost money.
Yeah, I'll concede several of your points that you're absolutely correct. There's nothing more fun, and I'm talking even food. There's nothing more fun than looking at a great mixologist menu and going over how they make it, what are the ingredients, and thinking, say that there's 15 of these drinks on there, and they're each, like I said, 20 or $25, whatever. And I'm thinking, I can only try 2 or 3 of these. That's the tragedy. I want to try about 8 of them. So, I mean, I don't have $300 to blow on cocktails tonight. And that's just for me. I mean, so I think that's kind of the frustration is
Right.
there's a little bit of jealousy involved in my bitterness. Fair enough?
But I'll tell you this, man, and you talk about how glamorous is my life, or whatever, this weird life that I tell you, though, you get to appreciate those things because you don't have them every night. And I get jaded with fine dining because, and I always say my wife's more jaded than I am, and I'm going to make her watch this later and she knows that I'm talking about her. But I'll take her to the best restaurants in the world and she'll go, meh. And I'm like, what do you mean, nah? What was wrong with it? And she's like, nothing's wrong with it, but you're taking me to this one tonight. You're taking me to this other one tomorrow night. You're taking me, there are things at the highest level when we're talking about a Robuchon tasting menu, when we're talking about E by Jose Andres, when we're talking about those things, those are once in a lifetime experiences for many people, and once a year experiences for many foodies, for many serious foodies and many wealthy foodies. Those are still once a year just to dine at that level once, right? Like it's only during your trip to Vegas, it's only one meal, and then you're going to decide, do I go to Robuchon? And that it's so much wow factor when you only do that once a year or once in your life. And that's why I love bringing my parents to these restaurants. That's why I love bringing my aunt to these restaurants, because I get to see it through their eyes. They've never seen it before. They're not to be done every night. When you do them every night, you get jaded. Now, I don't expect anybody to cry for me, oh, wow, Al eats the best food in the world every night of the week. But, those things weren't designed for people who can go, well, the way they smoke this bacon under glass in front of me at this restaurant isn't quite the same as the way they smoke the bacon under glass in front of me at the other restaurant. It's like, shut up. They're smoking bacon for you under glass. Look at it with the wide-eyed enthusiasm of somebody who's never seen that before, right? So that's what I would tell you about looking at those cocktail menus. You're not supposed to have all 30 of them, You're supposed to have one and maybe come back in 6 months, and you're supposed to crave it for the 5.5 months leading up to your return visit. You're supposed to be thinking about it. I mean, that's what it's all about, man.
Just like the strip clubs. I had to throw that in there.
I think great minds think alike here, man.
There we go.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I know it sucks when you have to have sex with strippers every night, doesn't it?
Quality control manager. All right, so Al, this is the part everybody's been waiting for. Going to be tough for you to do. I call this the lightning round. Your recommendations, best steakhouse in Las Vegas.
I always used to put a list together that depends on what the occasion is, what you're looking for. So I'll start with some that are not the very top of my list, and then I'll lead you up to it. I love Circus Circus for an old Vegas vibe. I haven't been there since it was sold, but I believe it's probably still just great because they have a great team over there. I love STK if you're going to go out partying that night. I love Wolfgang Puck's Cut if you want a deconstructed steakhouse experience. How can you look back into it again? I miss Carnivino because that was the best meat on the planet. So I still miss that to this day, and I crave it. But look, end of the day, Jose Andres, bizarre meat. Oh, yeah. That is a temple to carnivorism, man. And those guys know more about dead animal flesh and fire. Those two topics, dead animal flesh and fire. Jose Andres is should have a doctorate in both of those, and just about everybody working in those restaurants has would have a symbolic master's degree in both of those topics. They're the best.
What a great answer. I concur with that answer as well. Now, for those who don't know what we're speaking about, this is the steakhouse that's it used to be SLS. It's now the Sahara again. And it's a high dollar restaurant. The ambiance is beautiful. I think I've been there 5 or 6 times. I'll give you a quick story on that. I was with some friends. One of us ordered chicken. I'm not sure why we'd order chicken. Does anybody ever say, hey, the chicken was fantastic? Anyway, we ordered some chicken. And this chicken comes out on like a wooden board, and it's put out. And all of us tried that chicken, and we all looked at each other and said, "Holy mother of, that's the best chicken we'd ever had." Chicken.
Yeah.
That's not even, the steak or the other things that they had. It was like my mind just expanded on what meat could be, and
Yeah.
you're so right about that place.
You make sure you try the truffle chicken at Nomad one of these days too, if you want a good chicken dish.
Noted.
Just throwing that out there.
Noted. Best Italian. We're both Italian descent, so we're gonna have maybe a little fight here. We'll see. Al Mancini's favorite Italian restaurant in Las Vegas.
Well, I still cry that the Palms is closed and I can't eat at Vetri. Mark Vetri at the top of the Palms was absolutely brilliant. It was Italian at a totally different level. It wasn't for everybody, but the people it was for, it was the best. If you like red sauce Italian, if that's your thing, I still think Rayo's is a slam dunk go-to. I love them for what they do. I also, James Tree's new place in Tivoli Village, doing that red sauce Italian with a little bit of his gourmet twist. So it's Al Solito Posto, I believe. I always mess up the name, but so does everybody. So James, why'd you pick that name? I don't know. Anyway, but I love the restaurant, so you can't yell at me for telling you about that. And also James Tree's at Esther's Kitchen. So all of those places, they're all fantastic Italian restaurants. But, Las Vegas has a lot of great red saucy kind of joints. And, for the entertainment and the history, I also love Bootlegger. Right? How can you not like that?
Bistro, sure.
Yeah, and I also love Mark Vetri, and he's doing more of a red sauce joint over at Red Rock Resort, so I would go there as well. So.
You mentioned Tivoli Village, and my wife and I stumbled in there about 10 years ago to Echo and Rig, a very unusual menu. I've eaten in there 40 or 50 times since then. I've always liked Echo and Rig, but it's different. What is your take on Echo and Rig?
I've always liked Echo and Rig. I go there as a butcher shop and also bring home bones for my dog from there. I'll go there for a lot of things. But if there's one thing I always tell people about Echo and Rig that stood out, it's that the price is good. The price is very good. The pricing's really good. But one of the reasons for that is that they don't send you home with a giant steak, right? Like, I always feel like so many places in Las Vegas, they give you that Fred Flintstone Brontosaurus thing, and the table falls over, and then you're stuck making, $90 steak and eggs on Sunday when you're all hungover because you have all this leftover great meat that you had to bring home with you. And I love Echo and Rig that they keep their portion sizes human. You may not go home with leftovers, but because of that, you can eat there twice as many times because their prices are more affordable. And they've got a great quality product. I like Sam, who runs it.
Very well said, yeah. Best Thai restaurant. That's an impossible question. I think I know where you're going to probably go with this one, but give me two or three, if you will.
I mean, the truth of the matter is, how can you just not go over to Lotus of Siam? They're great people. They've got a great local story. They do an incredible food. They've been doing great Thai in Las Vegas for longer than anybody else. So, I'm going to go with the obvious answer on that one. But, I love what Dan and Shauna do at Le Thai down on Fremont Street. It's got a cool vibe. I think they had a period where they got a little too big for their britches and the food fell off a little bit, but that was really short-lived and they went right back up again. I love those guys. I love what they did to bring great food downtown. There's a place over here, Pana Thai, that my wife orders takeout from a lot that I really like over here on the west side. Yeah, so I dig all those places. But look, Lotus is Lotus, and it's one of those places that I don't want to say anything lives up to the hype, because at a certain point the hype gets to be too much, especially in Las Vegas. But I would gladly send people to Lotus of Siam day in and day out. And if they come back and tell me they had a bad experience, I'd be shocked. And I'd call Penny up and yell at her, but it would probably be my friend's fault, because I think my friends are more likely to be wrong than they are at Lotus. So.
All right, let's go with a little more casual dining. Best hamburger.
Man, tough for me to say because he just severed his ties with it, but Hubert Keller at Burger Bar for years. I mean, he invented the celebrity chef hamburger revolution, 12, 15 years ago, and Burger Bar always remained a fantastic experience.
Where is Hubert just?
It's in Mandalay Place.
Okay.
But, Hubert Keller just severed his ties with MGM Resorts. He's not going to be running Floor anymore. He's not running Burger Bar anymore. I still think they've got to, I know he trained that team and he oversaw them for well over a decade. So I'm still going to put my faith in them to do a good burger.
Best pizza.
Oh, man. Look, if Pizza, Vegas doesn't have one style of pizza, but in the past few years, we've started to have a lot of other styles done extraordinarily well. For the variety and for their pedigrees alone, you got to go to Metro Pizza. Go to the one up in the Northeast or Northwest, excuse me, because Chris Decker is in there day in and day out. John Arena's not always there anymore, but that's the closest to home for him, and Chris Decker's always there. So I love Metro Pizza. I also love Pizza Rock downtown. Tony Giacomanni is one of the greatest pizza makers in America alive right now. So is John Arena of Metro Pizza, by the way. But Tony does more styles at the downtown Las Vegas Pizza Rock than he does, I believe, at any of his other restaurants nationwide. I like all of them except his New York Street Pizza by the Slice. I'm not that huge of a fan, but the other 10 versions, other 10 styles he does out of Pizza Rock downtown are just phenomenal. So you go there. But look, also go to Evil Pie, go to Good Pie, go to DeFara. I mean, we have a lot of good pizza in this town. I'm missing a few others, but this is a great town to explore pizza. Pin-up pizza in the plaza is solid for New York Street Pizza as well.
Great. Stay away from the chains, please. Mediterranean. I just love Mediterranean food, man. Greek food, Persian food, Lebanese, Turkish food. Your favorite Mediterranean or Middle Eastern / Middle Eastern restaurant in Las Vegas?
Middle Eastern's a little rough. Okay, first of all, for Greek, Meraki, which is a counter service restaurant over here on Rainbow and Trop. I love them. They're absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that team is so good in there that they just went into business with Michael Mina, a partnership in Miami that they're doing together. But this is a super casual thing. I would definitely send people to Meraki day in, day out for Greek food. As far as Middle Eastern food, I don't know that you would call her Middle Eastern, but the breakfast spot that Sonia has called Rooster Boy Cafe. I mean, she's Lebanese and she does a lot of, she'll do some Middle Eastern breakfast dishes in there from time to time that are really, really wild and phenomenal. Persian, I'm going to ask you about because I do like Persian food, but I don't get out for it very often. And one of my friends who was Persian has left. She's in Utah with her chef husband now. So I don't get to go out for Persian much anymore. So where do you go for that?
There's been some turnover on Persian restaurants. Royal Persis is gone now. That was pretty much the gold standard for Iranian or Persian food. I just live down the street from Zaytun's, which is, they do have a small dine-in, but it's mostly a takeout. It's just excellent. Everything in there's, and by the way, 2 of us eat for $23. I mean, how can you beat that? There's so many.
I've been to Zaytun. I like them a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just solid. It's unfortunately, I think there's a void. We need some upscale. There was actually used to be a really good Middle Eastern restaurant at SLS. Of course, they shut down.
Cleo. I was just talking to one of the chefs from Cleo.
Yeah, Cleo was excellent. I was sorry to see them go.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of the chefs from there within the past week, and I told him also one of the best priced restaurants. What you got for your money at Cleo was fantastic. So sorry, people that didn't eat there, you don't get to. Sorry.
Yeah, Mexican restaurant, the best Mexican in Las Vegas.
Oh, I mean, Vegas Mexican. Look, we've got a lot of good little taco shops here in Las Vegas. That kind of deal. I really like to go over to Bomb Tacos, also close to you, I believe, right in with Zaytun, as a matter of fact. They're right in there with other Mambas, Zaytun, Bomb Tacos. They're all in that same little shopping center, which is fantastic across from Desert Breeze Park. Look, I still love Mary Sue and Susan at Border Grill. I'm sad that we lost Mike Miner as their executive chef again, but I'll always support those two, what they're doing at Border Grill. I had a couple others that were on the tip of my tongue, but I also like Frank and Fina's, which is over on Flamingo and like Grand Canyon-ish, like in there by where that out.
Right there off the 215 next to a Target.
Yeah, I enjoy them as well, but I don't think this is a good town for Mexican food in general. Unless
how about Javier's? Javier's, I think it's the Mirage, isn't it?
Yeah, no, Javier's in Aria.
Aria, excuse me, I stand corrected. Excuse me.
Yeah, I just went in there with Rick Moon and his significant other and my wife in the middle of, actually at the beginning of COVID. I think we went out there for Rick's birthday and it was okay. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I mean, I'm not just trying to be nice. I enjoyed my meal, but for the price and the atmosphere, and it just feels more like it's catering to the middle America crowd, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's good. I wouldn't tell you not to go there. If you're staying at Aria, definitely eat there, but I'm not making a trip to Aria just to eat there.
Let me throw in a recommendation, if I may, on top of that. El Segundo Sol, which is right across the street from the Wynn at Fashion Center. My wife and I have been there 40 or 50 times, maybe more than that. Terry Lynch used to be the chef there, and that is a Jalisco menu. I mean, the attention to detail at El Segundo Sol is and was exquisite. Terry Lynch is gone. They've had a little fall off probably, but that's still as good a restaurant, I think, as you'll find certainly on the strip for Mexican fare as well. So let me throw that in.
You know, I had some bad experiences in there when they were new. I never really got caught up to them, but I have a lot of friends who like there. I've gone back from time to time, and I've had decent experiences, but you know, it sucks when you do have a bad experience right off the bat. So I should give them more. They're owned by Let Us Entertain You, so it's the same company that has Eiffel Tower Restaurant and Mon Ami Gabi. So, you know, those guys know what they're doing with food.
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
You know.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Wife's downstairs. She says, ask him about Chinese. That's a really tough one because there's just so many different kinds of Chinese, but give us a list of some that you really, really like.
Chinese is tough because you live 10 years in New York City and you start thinking New York City takeout is like the definition of Chinese. That's what you call authentic.
Yeah.
And I am guilty of that. Like, I want things to be like New York City takeout Chinese food. And there's not a lot of that in town. There's a place over in Henderson that's been there forever. I can't remember the name of it. I think Joyful House, you know, go there. I also think Mark Marone over at Graffiti Bao, even though it's not, you know, specifically a New York City Chinese restaurant, he's got some great fried rice and lo meins and things that really resemble, and, you know, good scallion pancakes for that. But, you know, we've had a lot go on in Las Vegas. You know, about 5 years ago, everybody wanted to do the super expensive Chinese restaurant. Chinese gourmet, the Wing Lei knockoffs, you know, we had one of them everywhere. We had Red Plate, we had China Tang. They were just opening, Mott 32, all opening around the same time. I'm not a fan of like the $300 person high-end Chinese experience where they all want to tell you how their whole duck is unlike any other one. And they are phenomenal, but they get boring after a while to me. That's just my taste. I think the trend we're seeing in Chinese now is these really award-winning chains that are dim sum chains coming into town. You know, we have Din Tai Fung. I'm mispronouncing things today. Sorry. Anyway, the new place that came into Aria, you know, they do great soup dumplings over there. That's great for a chain kind of situation. We had the one that was in the Palms as well. That's not going to reopen most likely. So yeah, we have different kinds of Chinese here in Las Vegas, and I guess that's really, you know, this great new kosher Chinese place, Chinglish.
Yeah.
Have you been over there?
Yeah, sure. We tried it once, and I thought it was outstanding.
Yeah, I didn't eat on the kosher side, but I have written about them, and they brought me, you know, some food over from the kosher side. But I eat in the non-kosher side, and I like those guys a lot. You know, that's right in Boca Park. So I would definitely tell people to try that place. And a cool family-run joint. So, you know, I dig those people as well. They're nice guys.
But there's no such thing as Wo Hop in Las Vegas. We need Wo Hop.
There is no Wo Hop. But let me ask you this. Do you ever remember eating a Wo Hop sober? Because I don't think I do. It was always at 3 a.m. and I was always trashed. So was it really good? I'm
totally with you on what you're saying there. My wife arrived in this country 30 years ago from JFK Airport. She flew to the U.S. and long story about why she was there and then flew here. Our first restaurant we went to was Wo Hop. It was $18 for 2 of us. And we left like, it was the best meal we'd ever had. And so that's always been our like go-to. Yeah. And I don't care what time of day it is. There's some places that are just they're called greasy spoons, but they're just marvelous. And Wo Hop will always be that 24-hour great Chinese restaurant in New York that's, you know, that every cab driver knows.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was good. But I was always drunk. Very drunk. And it was always very late. The sun was coming up usually. So, yeah.
so let's get on to the last couple of questions here. Well, let's ask this. Best high-dollar strip restaurant. This city has a lot of them now. And if you just really, where expenses is no object, you want to impress the hell out of somebody, where would you go?
I think you've got to go to E by Jose Andres, one table, back room behind Jaleo. You know, they're usually, I mean, even before COVID, even when they packed the one table, I think there were only 7 seats at it. Don't hold me to that. Might have been as high as 8 or 9, but you're all around one. It looks like a blackjack table almost, where the chefs are where the dealers would be, and they make every dish in front of you. They use a lot of that Spanish avant-garde techniques that Jose Andres developed, became known as molecular gastronomy, you know, where things smoke and change forms and all that. They do it right in front of your eyes. There's usually more people serving you in that room than there are people eating in that room. And it's just, you know, it's like the 20-some courses, and every one has a magic show that goes with it. And yet it's Jose Andres' level quality. So to me, that is an experience. Now, that being said, I love Le Cirque. I love Robuchon. I love Guy Savoy. I love Twist by Pierre Gagnère. I would always, if I had the money for a once a year or once in a lifetime, you're never going to be disappointed at any of those places I just mentioned. And if you want to do that level of experience on a budget, you need to go look into Partage in Chinatown. French fine dining, multi-course meals, probably 40% less than you would pay on the Strip. And I'm not going to say it's as good as Robuchon in those places, but I'm saying you can mention it in the same sentence as them and not be left out of the room, because it's on that level.
Right. Excellent Partage. Very good. Now the final question. There's really 2. We're going to do the extremes to Al Mancini. Been a great, we said about an hour and 20 minutes in, but this has just been so much fun and just a lot of great advice. They're going to go with extremes. Al Mancini's worst experience ever.
In a restaurant. I don't know. Yeah, no.
I had to put the
I don't know if
disclaimer on there.
Counts. You know, when I was really young, my grandfather died, and I inherited some land out in like Western Pennsylvania. And my dad and I, years later, went out there to try to sell it. You know, this is where like you can only sell land to build a deer stand in, right? It's 100 acres. It's just deer land. And I don't even know what the name of the town was. And we asked them for the best restaurant in town. They sent us to a truck stop where like my open-faced turkey sandwich was Wonder Bread and canned turkey and canned gravy. So that was probably the worst. I'll tell you the worst I had here in Las Vegas, worst experience, and I still gave the place a good review because they knew how bad it was and they were kind about it, was when Toby Keith opened I Love My Bar and Grill over at Harrah's, and just everything went wrong that could go wrong that night. And yet they knew it, and they apologized, and they tried to make it better, and they tried to send over a drink and all that kind of stuff. But you could tell that they were brand new and they were getting their, you know, they're still learning the ropes. So it was a horrible experience. But I still gave them a review that said I wouldn't eat there now, but I would go back in 6 months and see if they got their shit together. So, you know, that was a pretty bad, when I was there to review a restaurant, that was a bad experience.
I was a big fan of, before he passed away, of Anthony Bourdain's program. And one of the reasons that I enjoyed his perspectives on food and travel and culture so much was he wasn't telling us about food. He was telling us about ourselves. And he's really missed, in my view. I always, again, just thought his documentaries were so good. I think I saw them all. And one of the shows that I watched a few times it was toward the end of his life, where he was in France, and he has this extraordinary meal. Now, this is a man who's eaten all over the world, the best meals everywhere in every country, always the red carpet treatment. And he had this, I don't know how many courses. It's the red carpet is rolled out, and he basically ends the show by saying, "I have just eaten the best meal of my entire life." And of course, we got to see it on film and savor all of the wonderful dishes at this place. Al Mancini, I'm going to put that to you. I'd like you not only to pick your best, most memorable meal you've had, but describe it to us.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember whether that was Bocuse that Bourdain was at when he was in Lyon. Was that Paul Bocuse's restaurant?
And
yeah,
it was just before he died. Yes.
Yeah.
I should have.
And God, I would love to go to. Yeah. I would love to go there, but I hadn't had the chance. But you know, I started writing a few down because you know people always ask this, and you know you could get. I could try to be cool and say it was street food that I ate in Bangkok, you know, and all that kind of stuff, but. I have to tell you the greatest experience, Morimoto in MGM Grand, And I had gone in there. Now, I'd interviewed Iron Chef Morimoto many times over the years when he'd come to town for various things. I went in, I interviewed him. I interviewed a lot of his staff prior to the opening. I really hit it off with a lot of them. We talked a lot about sustainable seafood, etc. And then they invited us in for the opening weekend. They said, "Al, you know, come in." So I made the reservation for a Thursday. I was going to go in. I was going to eat there on their opening weekend at Morimoto and MGM. And they called me and they said, "Look, Chef Morimoto is not going to get into town until Friday. We'd really like it if you could come in on Friday." And I said, "You know, guys, I really appreciate it, but you don't have to be, you know, you don't have to kiss my ass. I'll come in. I want to come in when it's quiet for you guys, when it's not a big deal. I don't want you to have to, you know, have me on a weekend when you're busy, opening weekend. No. Chef Morimoto really, really wants to be here when you come in." And of course, you're super honored when that happens. But what I wasn't prepared for was that we got in and they sat us at the very end of the sushi bar, and Chef Morimoto proceeded to cut each piece of sushi for my wife and myself directly in front of us and talk to us about the dishes. And if you want to, I mean, this is the kind of thing that if they auctioned off at a charity auction, it probably would have gone for $25,000 or $50,000, you know, because Chef Morimoto does not cut sushi very frequently. His own team were taking pictures of it because it was such a rare thing to actually have him do. And of course, he talked to my wife and myself about, you know, how when he did the 3 different cuts of tuna, when he did the otoro, the chutoro, and the toro, like how the exact same amount, he put a different amount of wasabi on each because of how the fat content of each was different. And he handed us each piece of nigiri and we ate it directly from his hands. And when he finished, he said, "I'm going to make you a dish that I've only made once, never in America. I made it on TV in Japan. I've never made it since." He proceeded to break open a sea urchin, bring it out, do whatever it is you do to cure the roe when you take it out. I don't know, but it, you know, washed it kind of, and then sprinkled it with powdered sugar and took a blowtorch and caramelized it like a creme brulee and handed us this just moments ago live sea urchin that he'd never made in the United States before. I don't know how you can have an experience that's any cooler than that. Better men than me deserve to have had that experience. It was well above what I am deserving of, and I will treasure it till my dying day. And also, it's kind of funny because like a lot of the advice that I give my wife on eating sushi that she would not take from me, she took it when Morimoto gave it to her. So that was like, you know, I'm like, I try to tell her that all the time, only one bite and things like that, but. No, I mean, we were both just blown away, and I'm super thankful to everybody at MGM and everybody in the Morimoto family for honestly for thinking that highly of me, that they would allow me to experience that, because it was one of a kind.
Well, what a great story and a great way to end the interview and discussion. I mean, there are foodies and people who are not foodies ask, why are we foodies? Well, it's just what the way you described it. It's not eating, it's the experience and just all the senses coming together and enjoying something, and then being able to share that, and not just share it with somebody that you were with, your wife in this occasion, but to share it weeks, months, and even years later. Now that is,
you know, food is always about the stories, and I think people need to remember that. And you know, remember that it's about the stories and the memories, and that's the most important thing you take away from any meal. I've written about 2 things in my life extensively. I've written about music and I've written about food, and both of them are sensory experiences that can take you back in time. I can have a dish or taste a spice in a pasta sauce that reminds me of my grandmother and immediately brings me back to weddings, funerals, you know, the moments that are important. And that's what it's all about, man. You know, it's really not about who cuts that piece of fish perfectly. It's about the people that you're enjoying that piece of fish with, man. And I mean, that if I have any advice to anybody, it's make memories with the places that you dine, and then, you know, erase them with the booze, because that way you can reinterpret them a little better years down the road.
And I'll just put a punctuation mark on what you said by saying you don't have to have a lot of money. There's a lot of great values in this town. You can start off, when I say small, I don't mean insignificant. You can have a lot of great $30 meals in this town. And I mean it because I do it all the time. And start off and just go with what you like, and you'd be surprised where you'll end up later down the road. Al Mancini, thank you. This has been so much fun. Thank you, and keep up what you're doing and sharing, and hopefully we'll do it again some other time.